Hello, my name is Isabella Perez, Recreation Leader for the City of Socorro. Thank you for joining today's meeting. Before the meeting begins, we would like to remind our guests to remove all hats and silence all electronic devices. No destructive behavior or outbursts will be tolerated, and violators are subject to ejection and possible prosecution.
Hola, mi nombre es Judy Rodríguez, secretaria de Planificación de la Ciudad de Socorro. Gracias por participar en la reunión de hoy. Antes de que comience la reunión, nos gustaría recordarles a nuestros invitados favor de quitarse los sombreros y silenciar todos los dispositivos electrónicos. No se tolerará ningún comportamiento perturbador ni exabrupto y los infractores estarán sujetos a expulsión y posible procesamiento.
It is 5:54 p.m. This meeting is called to order. Item number 2, Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 3, establishment of quorum.
Ruben Reyes is absent. Cesar Nevares. Here. Alejandro Garcia is absent. Mayor Ivy Avalos.
Here.
Rudy Cruz.
Present.
And Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Here.
Planning and Zoning, Yoli Rodriguez.
Here.
Andrew Arroyos.
Here.
David Estrada.
Here.
Osvaldo Reza is absent. Julie Dominguez.
Here.
Enrique Cisneros.
Here.
HLC, Rafael Padilla.
Here.
Dr. Elizabeth Lugo.
Here.
Ricardo Rocha.
Here.
Al Borrego is absent. Jesse Montelongo is absent. Maria Angeles is absent. And David Estrada.
Here.
Item number 4, public comment.
Mayor, we have no speakers for public comment.
Moving on to consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
Motion to consent agenda.
Ruben Reyes is absent. Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia is absent. Rudy Cruz.
Yes.
And Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Yes. Moving on to regular agenda, planning and zoning, item number 6, presentation and discussion on the development of a unified development code.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Lorraine Camilo, City Planner. I just wanted to take the opportunity to introduce you to the lead with Able City, Carlos Gainar, who was the consultant chosen to take on the project of assist us in developing the Unified Development Code for the City of Socorro. Carlos will introduce himself and his team, and then proceed with the presentation.
Mayor and Council, good afternoon. Carlos Gainar, also to the members of the Planning and Zoning and the Historic Landmark Commission. Happy to be here once again. Happy to see some familiar faces, some old friends, and a great joy and pride to be back in this space. City of Socorro, as you all know, holds a great dear place in my heart. I grew up not too far from here, and so it's always nice to be back in this community. So we have, and probably one of the most historic meetings that the City of Socorro has had, in which you are gathering both the City Council, the Planning and Zoning, and the HLC. Not sure that has ever happened, so kudos to you for taking the time to discuss this really important issue. So what we want to do is walk you through a series of slides as it pertains to, let me see. So here's the agenda for tonight. I know, again, super important that you all are here. We're going to do an introduction, slides dealing with your development codes, the Unified Development Code as well. We're going to do a visual preference survey. We're going to do a hands-on exercise. That's why you see the maps around the tables. And then we are going to open it up for public comment because really part of our scope here in the last couple of days is to listen to the community, listen to elected officials, listen to the volunteers of the different bodies. And so it's important for us to get as much information from you all as possible. Before we begin, we also wanted to be as interactive as possible, and I know that there was the public service announcement at the beginning of the meeting, but we do encourage, if we can, Mayor and Council, for this purpose, the use of your phones. And so if you want to take a minute to take a picture of the QR code, because it's going to activate a series of poll questions, again, to gather information from you all this evening. So I'll just wait a few seconds, and it should take you to a, yeah, staff wants to do it, that way we know that it's working. So if everybody's ready, we're going to just start with the first interactive question.
Does anyone need help? Just raise your hand and walk around.
Yes. And then, we don't know this for sure, but I think if there are people watching at home, you should also be able to take a shot of the QR code and then get you through a series of questions. So if everybody's ready, we'll do the next one. And so the question is, how long have you lived in Socorro? I know that's hard to see for some folks, but the question is less than 1 year, 1 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, 10 to 20 years, and then all of my life. The next question, and I'm going to go back to that response in just a minute, but Socorro's land development codes are, and this is a word cloud, so just put any word that you may have. I know some folks may be more familiar with land development codes than others, but if you could just put a response. So Socorro's land development codes are antiquated, needed, home, plan, updating. So we're talking about your current codes, okay? We're going to talk a little bit about your current codes, and then we're going to spend some time talking about what a unified development code is. But we have words like needed. Yep, it is needed. It does need updating. We have Rafael Padilla on there as well. We know who Ralph is. Okay, so if we're ready for the next question. Antiquated times, home, updated, need. Lacking criteria, years, broad. Okay, so the next question is, when completed, and I know we're going to spend some time talking about that again, but when completed, Socorro's UDC should be, so we're talking about we talked earlier about your current code, now we're talking about your future code. When completed, Socorro's UDC should be, and again, we're looking for one-word responses. Anyone coming up? People? Yeah, there we go. Understandable, inclusive, progressive, helpful, clear, modern times, inclusive, unified, improved, understandable. So all really great and wonderful words, right? And it's exactly right. Already you all understand, you all are subject matter experts in your all community, so you understand the need for a unified development code. Comprehensive, progressive, modern, okay? And I think we have one more response here. I love Socorro because, and again, looking for one-word response or two-word responses, but I love Socorro because home, history, community, familia, people, culture. Biggest one is community still, home. People, history, culture, the potential, correct. open areas, agriculture. And I will come back to the connection of why we're asking these questions as we go through the presentation, but rural, agricultural, El Paso. Great. So why don't we do an introduction? Just want to talk briefly about Able City. So we are an urban design, urban planning consulting firm. We have offices in El Paso, San Antonio, Laredo, McAllen. We take an integrated approach to design and development. So sometimes what happens is you may have an architect design a building or a structure without any context to the surrounding community. And sometimes you have urban planners that design neighborhoods or design streets without the context of buildings. And so we pride ourselves in saying that we take an integrated approach, both from a community perspective, from an economic development perspective, from a planning perspective, from an architectural perspective. And so that is part of the work that we pride ourselves in doing. We also pride ourselves in knowing that we are fronterizos, we are from the border. About 90% of our employees are bicultural, 90% of our employees are bilingual. Our market is the US-Mexico border, the Texas-Mexico border, and so we do work all along the Texas-Mexico border. Again, we like that we are Latinos, we like that we are Hispanic, we like that our staff speak Spanish, we like that we represent, and many times, if we're lucky enough, the communities that we're working in. And so this is just a snapshot of part of the market that we work in. And again, it's along the Texas-Mexico border. In terms of development codes, we have done a few. This is just a list of the ones that we are doing. I want to draw your attention to, so we've done San Antonio's UDC code, Laredo recode as well. And then I want to draw your attention to some of the ones at the bottom. We have done work in the town of Horizon, working on their transit-oriented development design standards. We are currently working in the community of Clint, not too far from here, next to Socorro. They are also undertaking the very important task of updating their codes, such as Socorro. And then again, super proud, you guys know this and I hope you know this, super proud on my behalf to be able to type in City of Socorro as part of the work that we are doing through our consulting firm. Part of our team is here, so again, Carlos Gallinar, we'll have Jason King come up in just a minute. We have Alfonso Camacho, we have Luis Escalante. Jay Fershing, who is a sub-consultant, will be focusing on the historic district and historic landmarks. So you'll hear from him in just a minute. And then we do have an in-house consultant as a sub-consultant, Mark White, who will be providing quality control, quality assurance as we develop a code to make sure that not only is it all the beautiful things that you all described, but that it meets the state requirements, right? Meets the legality of any challenges as we draft the code. We also, again, we love to plan in public. Part of the conversation that we have here is allowing folks to draw, folks to think about some of these things that sometimes you may not have the time to think about, but are very important. So we also pride ourselves in being a firm that likes to design in public. I'm going to just talk briefly about the project scope and timeline. So here is the project. So we have a project kickoff, which is essentially the last several weeks and starting with today. After we're done here, we're going to do the code diagnostic, which will review 15 items from the Socorro codes and policies. We'll provide a diagnostic measuring against various other documents, such as federal, state regulations. We're going to do some community outreach starting with today and then going through 2025. First quarter of 2025, we'll start some public meetings, stakeholder meetings, and then the last part of our scope is to develop a unified development code and a code that you all will be proud to adopt. Again, in terms of the project schedule, so we are in September of 2024, we're doing the project initiation, we're doing the data collection and analysis, and then the City Council joint workshop with the HLC and the PNZ. And then again, this is just a snapshot of the different tasks that we would be doing over the next several months. So what is a unified development code? So it's really important, if I may, to set the foundation for why we are here in 2024, thinking through what happened in 1986. And so what happens in 1986, I don't have to tell this group, is that the town of Socorro is incorporated into a municipality. And what happens then is that as Socorro becomes a city, in 1989, when you start to establish your regulations, planning becomes a little bit too technical, right? So you have many swaths of areas of Socorro that were constructed and developed before there were any codes, before there were planners, zoning, subdivisions. And so that's something that comes into play today when residents are asked to have to abide by regulations when they weren't used to for many, many years and many, many generations, right? So that's something that we're gonna have to think through. And as Socorro grows, the population has also grown, right? So in 2000, you had about 27,840 people. There's a mural outside in the foyer that I believe said that at some point your population was like 300 and something, which is unbelievable for a community now that in 2020, you're at about 35,000 individuals. So Socorro is growing. You're seeing the demands of development. You're seeing the pressures of growth. And with it, you need to have the proper regulations to ensure that you're growing adequately. I'm not going to go through the next several slides in detail, but what I did want to focus on is that you also currently went through a very important process through your comprehensive plan. So one of the very first things that Laureen asked us to do is, hey guys, before you do anything else, please read our comprehensive plan. And so all of our team read it. We started to mark it up because what happens is that the comprehensive plan, which you spend a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of resources and a lot of community input on, should then dictate what we do, the work that our team will do, which is your regulations, your policies, right? So the comprehensive plan is an overarching, really beautiful document that sets the vision for Socorro through 2040. We then extract some of these aspects of your plan to come up with those policies and regulations that you need to support the comprehensive plan. So one of the first ones that you see under growth and development goals and policies, goal number 1, the Unified Development Code is aligned with the future land use map and comprehensive plan. So that's your very first goal that you said as part of your comprehensive plan. We want to make sure that the comprehensive plan is aligned with the UDC. So that's part of the work that we will do. Others that you talk about, so you see housing, diverse housing options, serve existing and future residents of all ages, incomes and needs. Policy GD 6.B, amend the Unified Development Code to require neighborhood amenities such as pocket parks, trails, community gardens, and playgrounds. Promote pedestrian and vehicular mobility by designing connections to adjacent uses. And then you have some goals for mixed use as well. Perhaps one of the most important aspects that we looked at when we highlighted your comprehensive plan is this quote, and it says, throughout the development of the 2040 comprehensive plan, residents emphasize the importance of preserving Socorro's unique agricultural heritage and lands. Not only should historical areas be preserved and protected, but the development surrounding these sites should also align with their character. Residents express a range of preferences on housing, from large agricultural properties to single unit multifamily options, to support housing diversity and affordability. So again, this is all just to reiterate that we are paying attention to your comprehensive plan, which sets the foundation for many of the things that you will do for the next several years. There's also a discussion on conservation subdivisions. And so what that means, I just want to share an example with you. This is some slides of some examples that we worked recently in Clint. And so Clint is not dissimilar to Socorro, right? There's a lot of similarities, smaller of course, but you still have a lot of agricultural land. And so what that community is also saying is we want to preserve our agricultural land. But we know that if you take, and this is a drawing similar to the ones that you will do in just a minute, of folks talking about this green space, right? You see marking out the green space as protected lands. You still need homes, you still need pocket parks, you still need streets, so they drew that out. What our team then did is, how does that look like from a development perspective? So in Clint, like many areas of Socorro, there we go. You still have a lot of vacant agricultural land. And so instead of, as an example, 100% of that land is developed into 100% single-family units. How do you develop land in a way that you all have expressed that you conserve some of that land, that you could grow a little bit more compact? And so this is an illustration of what that could look like, right? So you still have single-family homes, you still have commercial areas, you still have multifamily areas, but you also have, because of your regulations and your policies, areas that you're preserving for future generations. So it can't be done, right? There's the pressures of development that come from developers and the market and people saying, we want to live in Socorro. And then there's the pressure of your own residents who have been here a very long time saying we like the agricultural, rural aspect of our community and we want to keep some of that. And so if your comprehensive plan is saying that that's what the direction you want to go to, then part of our work and part of our conversation here with you tonight and over the next several months is to see how we get that done through your codes and regulations. So again, what is the Land Development Code? The rules and guidelines for how Socorro develops. Land development codes, how you use your property. I think you all may have heard me say this before, that just because you own a piece of property does not mean that you could do whatever you want. I know that I don't have to say this to the P&Z because you see it every couple of weeks, but it does dictate what you can and cannot build on your property. How you use your property, it gives you property dimensional standards. So again, the lot, the width of your lot is dictated in black and white. It's not arbitrary, folks, right? It's not someone saying, I'm gonna do a lot that's más o menos 100 feet or 95 feet or 98 feet. It has to be exactly what your code requires based on the zoning district. And so it's very clear what you, not only what you can and cannot build on your land, but how you build it on your land. Development codes, what can be built in a neighborhood, how streets are designed and organized, how comfortable your commute is, right? You've heard people talk about traffic and traffic impacts once you start developing in areas that may not be able to hold that capacity. Parking is a big one, if and how much parking the city requires you to build. And then other requirements are fencing, drainage, curb types, sidewalks, density, the permit process, access to lots, signage, all these things. Landscaping is not on here, but very important. So the Land Development Code impacts our Socorro in every way, right? Again, I know you guys know this, but let me emphasize that it's not, a developer can't do whatever he wants. It is very specific. There's specificity to how you build. And so Unified Development Code is a comprehensive set of regulations that consolidates various land use and development regulations into a single document. We had a great conversation yesterday with some of your PD staff and your code enforcement and some of your planning staff. And one of the things that keeps coming up is the code is confusing, right? Our code is confusing. It was developed back in 1989 with some piecemeal aspects of it. But if you reference one part of the code and you reference another, it's conflicting, right? If you talk about one section of the code or one definition of the code, and then you cross-reference with another section of the code, it's conflicting. And so we are here to unify your development code so that it's not conflicting, so that it's precise, so that it's clear, so that everyone knows what the rules and regulations are. So a UDC is exactly that. We're gonna look at all the different components of your land development code and provide one unified code that is understandable and easy to interpret. I want to talk a little bit about what the benefit is to the community, because I think it's really important. Again, the city recognizes that this is an important aspect that you should be doing. You're spending resources and time on us, on your staff, and so you should know how this is going to benefit. So I want to talk about how it's going to benefit the community, how it's going to benefit city government, and then how it's going to benefit developers. So once you have a unified development code, in terms of the community benefits, you can expect the clarity and consistency, right? A UDC provides a clear and consistent set of rules for land use and development. Number two, it's predictable. There's no more guessing. Again, there's no more like people coming to the public and saying, well, they're going to do this or they're going to do that. It's a predictable land use code. It implements Socorro 2040 with enhanced planning. So again, we talked about the importance of your comprehensive plan. You're now going to be able to put those visions and goals into action. And then there's community engagement, right? So a well-organized UDC can make it easier for community members to participate in the planning process as it consolidates information and makes it more accessible. How about for Laureen and your staff and the elected officials? How can it benefit you? So there's efficiency. By consolidating regulations into a single document, the City of Socorro can streamline the review and approval process. There's consistency in enforcement. We had a great conversation with Deputy Chief, and there's no more guessing, right? There's consistency in the way that you interpret and enforce your laws. There's improved planning and development. The integration of various regulations into a single code helps cities, planners, and officials ensure that development aligns with broader city goals and plans like Socorro 2040. And then it's easier to update and amend. I remember when I was here, we had a lot of conversations about having to amend, and we piecemealed it. But again, we ran into confusion. So we amended one piece, but then there was unintended consequences in another section of the code. So once you have a brand new unified development code, moving forward, it will become easier to make amendments and make changes to your code. And then finally, how does it benefit the developers, which we recognize are an important members of your community? It, again, simplifies the process, predictability and transparency. Developers benefit from the predictability and transparency that a UDC provides. It streamlines the approval process. So instead of having to wait 60, 90, 120 days, you could do it much faster. And then there's improved project design. Once you know what your regulations are, not once developers know what to expect, what the city wants out of its design, again, there's no more guessing. They understand what the expectation is, and they could choose to not build in Socorro. But those that want to build in Socorro will do it in a way that reflects your culture, your character, your vision, your aspirations, again, through the interpretation of a predictable, streamlined process and code. This is just a list of the different elements that we're going to provide into your UDC. So again, we looked at your comprehensive plan. It will include zoning and subdivisions, historic landmarks and district design guidelines, streets, utilities, fire prevention, building and construction, manufactured and mobile homes, major thoroughfare plan review, your parks master plan, your ADA transition plan, your sidewalk master plan, and your future land use map, which was part of your comprehensive plan. And then, as I mentioned, we spent quite a amount of time with staff yesterday, and so these are just some things that we heard. Things like we need more teeth along the mission trail. Let's fix the contradictions in the code that are causing confusion. Better define the accessory dwelling unit versus the accessory structure ordinance. Outline requirements for a complete subdivision application. And then in order to beautify Socorro, we need a landscape ordinance that provides trees and better sign ordinance that enhances our aesthetics. So this is things that are coming from your staff. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Jay, and he's going to spend a little bit of time talking about the historic district and the historic guidelines and the historic landmarks. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I've been a preservation specialist in Texas for about 30 years now, and I think it was in 1994, right at the end of my graduate school career, that I worked on a project documenting, assessing, and drawing the mission churches and the chapel here. So it's great to be back in Socorro. Man, things have changed a lot since I was here 30 years ago. I'll be looking at the historic preservation aspects of the code. What the historic preservation code typically is an overlay over the underlying code. So you have all these codes that Carlos was talking about that explain how property can be used. The historic preservation code sort of provides additional layers of either restrictions, perhaps, that somebody might need to follow, but also it might make it might make things easier. For example, existing buildings that can't meet certain standards might be given a little bit more leeway. So that's what I'll be looking at. I'll be looking at the code, and I've looked at it a little bit already, and we'll be writing that to make sure that it meets state requirements. But that's kind of only one aspect of this. It's important to understand that the code itself is just one tool in a toolbox to help you achieve your goals. It's not going to It's not going to solve all of your historic preservation problems to put it in a code. So, but the code needs to not conflict with what your goals are and what you're hoping to do. So what I'll be looking at is, does the code align with what the goals you have that are set out for you? But also, do the processes that you use to enforce the code work well for you? And how is your interface with the community? Is the process understandable to them? Can they learn about the things they need to learn in order to understand the code and comply with it? So it's sort of not just the code, it's about what the code does for your community. The 2040 plan kind of supports those various ideas. If you look at the various goals, which, you know, I won't go over all of them, but they kind of fall into those same categories. They don't really talk as much about the code, but talk about the goals that you have for what the code will help you accomplish. Be they, they're kind of in general categories like economics, quality of life, things like that. Of course, quality of life, an improved quality of life, improved historic districts, improve your economy. And that's one aspect of the economic portion of it. But there's also the carrot and the stick aspect of it, in that how can you use incentives to help promote preservation and get things done. Help owners of historic properties in your districts get the work done that they need to do, make it easier for them. So we'll be looking at those things. In looking preliminarily at what you have going on so far, you do have a code structure. I would describe your historic preservation program as sort of in its infancy, and what you have, the framework you have, is sort of skeletal right now. What's important to remember is you're part of the Certified Local Government Program. The Certified Local Government Program is a local, state, and federal partnership. You enter an agreement with the state of Texas as their primary partner. And they provide a framework for how you write your ordinance, what it should say. They require you set up a landmark commission, that you have a historic preservation officer, and they provide all kinds of amazing resources to help you get your code in shape and also to run your program and meet the goals of your program. So right now, you're not exactly meeting the requirements of CLG. Your code right now is a framework as described in the CLG program, but it's, again, sort of a skeleton. It doesn't really have a lot of meat on it. So our goal here will be fleshing that out, adding meat on the bones. But you'll also need to remember that over time, as you develop a better understanding of how your programs are working, you're going to want to add to that, add modules, and we'll kind of touch on that a little bit as I go forward. The design guidelines are quite old, but they're also quite good for the mission trail. But they're not really tailored specifically to your community. There's things you can do to strengthen them, add a little bit more clarity. An example we were talking about earlier with design guidelines is they can be counterproductive in a way sometimes because they promote a sameness. People look at a guidebook and they just sort of apply some of the things that are suggested in the book. So you might wind up with, say, 15 commercial businesses on Socorro Road that have a mission parapet on top, and they all kind of look the same. So the goal would be to help to avoid that by modifying the guidelines a little bit, clarifying things, and tailoring them more to your community. But you also are going to have the issue of needing additional guidelines. This is a great example of that. This is not really well defined yet, what this historic property is and what your goals are for it and how it would be designed in the future. So we need to be looking at that. The biggest thing you're missing in terms of your CLG compliance is that you don't have a comprehensive historic resources survey. The CLG program requires that you have one of those. So you hire somebody like me, they canvass your community and try to identify every historic property. It doesn't mean you're designating the property, it just means you're identifying that it actually exists and putting it in a record. And then they want you to update that every 10 years. The hardest one is the first one because you've got to find everything. After that, you're really going back and resurveying, seeing what's still there, seeing what you might have lost, and also new buildings are historic every day because they become old enough to be historic. So you want to keep up with that as you move farther ahead and identify what things in your community you want to preserve that are not yet historic. And the last thing I mentioned earlier is you don't really have an incentives program that's focused on historic preservation. You do have some incentives, but you really don't have any that help historic building owners or encourage them to invest in their property. So that might be like temporary property tax abatements on the added value of a property, things like that, just to help an owner invest in their property and bring it up to standard. But the ordinance is not going to necessarily solve all of your existing problems. The historic preservation ordinance isn't, because it's not going to necessarily enforce whether somebody has trucks parked in their front yard. That's part of other aspects of your ordinance. That's up to you to try to clean up the overlying problems, to burrow in and understand what your historic resources are and how to protect them. But a good example of understanding what you have is looking at what you have identified as your existing historic resources that are on this map. So you have of course, the Mission Trail, and you have the Rio Vista Farm here, but they're not well defined in your ordinances, what the boundaries are, what exactly they are, and especially this property, it's shown quite large as a district on this map, but there's no, you haven't yet defined in your codes what all that means, what the boundaries are, why they are where they are, and what your goals are for that. So you need to do that. But an example is there's also, you're in one of the largest National Register historic districts in Texas, which is the El Paso Water Improvement District, National Register District, which goes all the way from El Paso all the way through the Mission Trail area and covers all of the canal systems. So understanding those, how you want to deal with them in the future, do you want design guidelines for those? How do you partner with the county, with the improvement district to protect those and develop them as assets in the community? So what I'm proposing to do with this is to update your ordinance according to state and federal guidelines, and that's kind of the easier part to flesh that out, because we have a lot of examples and we have the support of the Certified Local Government program to build on. But we also want to look at what do you need to do to get in compliance with the CLG program? What resources do you need to get that survey done? The CLG program provides grants to help you do that. They provide on-site training. They'll bring people in to help train your staff, to help train the landmark commissioners and your local historic preservation officer. And also we'll be looking at, like I said, how are your processes working? Does the ordinance fit with the goals of the city, with the specifics of your historic districts? And is everything understandable, and are your processes working? So speaking with the Landmark Commission, does the CA process work? Are you able to understand, are members of the community able to understand the process, what they need to do, and even why the historic district and their guidelines exist? So that's my goal, is to really be focused on that historic preservation ordinance, but also looking at how it works for you and meeting your goals.
Great. All right, let's do some more keypad polling, visual preference survey stuff. Let's try it again with the QR code. If you take out your phone, yep, and let's take a picture. Oh my gosh, look how small that QR code is now. Let's do this. Let's go around. If anyone's QR code isn't working, let's show them this image. Over here in the corner, there's a couple people that didn't. So, land development regulations are complicated things. And there's a lot of little numbers like setbacks and lane widths and percentage of open space and the slope of roofs And instead of getting into the nitty and the gritty of those details, what we're doing here is we're just going to show you some pictures. Because at the end of the day, the Land Development Code is about buildings, streets, and public spaces. And everybody understands buildings, streets, and public spaces, and everybody has an understanding of what's better and what's worse. So we're going to spend 15 minutes, and then we're going to go to the exercises. And I'm just going to show you 12 different images, and you're just going to react to it. And you're just going to react. The question is, do you like this for your community? And you answer yes, no, or maybe. All right. Is it working for everybody? All right, good. All right, so that's our first image. And again, we're gonna go through them kind of fast, right? And then we'll talk about what it means at the end. Here's our second image. Do you like this for your community? Yes, no, or maybe? Good, we got 14 responses. We got 16 responses. You guys are getting much quicker. All right. Here's another image. And we're recording the results. The people who are writing your code are in the room. They're watching and listening and learning. Okay. Here we are. There's a lot of things happening in this image, but just go with your gut response. Your, subconscious is working on this, and you're reacting to a lot of different things. All right. What do you think when you see this image? Do you like this for your community? Yes, no, or maybe? Okay. What about when you see an image like this? It's important to note, none of these images are from Socorro. They're not even from El Paso. It's too dangerous. I used to show pictures from the town, and it turns out it was the mayor's house or the fire station they just put $15 million into, so don't do that anymore. So these pictures are not going to be exactly Socorro, but we're learning a lot already. How about this? What's your reaction to this image? Okay. These are going to get a little harder. Specifically, the question is, do you like this for your community? Yes, no, or maybe? All right. I know you're dying to talk about this. We're going to be talking about these in just a moment. Here's another. It's probably very hard to see from where you're sitting, but the bottom floor of that also says CVS. That's a CVS at the bottom floor. All right. Your reaction to this might be based on whether you had dinner or not. I'm feeling it at the moment.
Mine's green. That one's yellow.
What's
My
green?
M is green.
Your M is green, really? I don't know how to explain that.
McDonald's?
All right, just a few more. All right. Again, might be hard to see, but this says McDonald's on it. Okay. And this is our last set. Again, what is this picture even of? We'll talk about it. But what's your reaction? It is a development, but it is not Socorro. It looks like it, yeah. That's right. All right, so that's interesting. Now, This next one is a little changed. There's a little change. Can you pick up on it? Yes, no, or maybe? You see where this is headed? All right. And one more version of that same picture. All right. So that's all right. Well, okay, that's interesting. All right. So we've recorded all of them. So now, and this is a workshop, so we're going to talk about it. We showed these 3 images. People were positive about the one on the left, but there was a few maybes, and there was even a couple no's. People were more positive about the one in the middle, right? And then the one on the right, the furthest one, got probably the most positive reaction of any of the images that we showed. All right. So what is it? What is it that you're reacting to? This is a workshop. It's interactive. The trees. Yeah, greenery. That's right. Shade. Might come as a surprise to you, but right now your land development regulations aren't requiring anyone to put in even that second image, let alone that third image. These are the kind of things that we work on. Such an overwhelming response to that third image, and yet there is no law in the books that says a developer has to put in trees. And your trees are cheap. It's $200 for an oak tree. I mean, I wish we had those prices where I'm from. So this is an important thing. It seems like shade is an important thing to the people of Socorro. Some of these pictures were paired. So these are 2 different ways of doing a hotel. It's your land development regulations which are going to tell people how to develop that. Does anyone sort of call out what they responded to, what they liked or they didn't like? There's a lot of very positive reaction to the one on the left. What else but it was a little stronger on the one on the right. The historic look, yeah? Historic look.
Less commercial look to it.
Less commercial, the one on the right? Yeah. Yeah, it could be a house, right? More welcoming. So this is all about how you tweak your land development regulations. This is the signage code. This is the parking code. This is setbacks. This is whether you have a historic preservation ordinance or not. This is whether you have a tree ordinance. Without, you get what you have on the left, and with something on the right. Now, it was funny. A lot of people did like the CVS on the left, and there was mixed feelings about the one on the right, yet there were more positive responses to the one on the right. What did you react to? What did you see, and why did you vote what you voted? The facade. What about the facade?
I like the one on the left because it was more inviting. It was more a mixture of home and like it looked like a neighborhood, like a small town.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right. So we've got a fan of the one on the left.
The signage, that's the issue.
Was it? What do you see when you look at the signage?
The signs are too big. They stand out too much.
Oh, really? Stand on the right. All right. So we have a correction. I was so happy to hear someone defending the one on the left. First time in 20 years. But no. All right. Okay. The one on the right. That's right. So mixed use is an interesting word applied to the one on the right. Correct. Yeah. The one on the right. That's right. Yeah. This isn't Socorro, but there's some historic elements there. The pilasters, the cornice, the proportional system, that all looks very similar to what you have. The other one's Vegas. This is 2 different ways of doing a very large building. Both of these buildings have roughly the same amount of square footage. Any reactions? What did you see? Big smiling. What were you thinking?
It looks like just the other commercial center anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah.
First thing I think about when I see that is traffic, parking.
Yeah.
Just
Yep. Yeah. That's right. And Socorro is different. Socorro's on the community now. This is one of the most ancient communities in this country. This is a big responsibility. So the one on the right, it still has plenty of parking. It's just in the back. Now this is a little more subtle, and people were positive about both. Although we did see a bunch of no's to the one on the left, and there was only 1 no to the one on the right. These are 2 ways of doing multifamily housing. And what did you react to? the mission style, yeah. There's a parapet, right? There's balance, there's rhythm, there's an emphasis with that porch. Yeah, there's a unity.
It's a street level.
What's that?
Street level.
Street level, yeah. So the one on the right is on a street. See how the cars are parked parallel? And the one on the left is in a parking lot. And that's a big difference. Do you live in a parking lot or do you live on a street?
I thought it was storage on the lower level.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like storage. It doesn't look like a place for people. Yep. So this is two different ways that a building would front the street. So you have requirements, and it tells buildings how they should address the street. People were more positive. Actually, to be honest, people in Socorro are more positive than anywhere else I've ever worked, because you kind of liked everything that someone liked everything that I showed. Yet people were overwhelmingly positive about the one on the right. It's just a matter of requirements. Are the requirements requiring storefronts, galleries, street trees? It's my wife walking on the left, and it's one blank wall after another. And it's Homestead, it's in Florida, and it's a little downtown. It's such a pity nobody goes to it. We're going to be changing the regulations. We're going to be making buildings more like the one on the right, based on your responses. And the McDonald's, again, was one people were very positive about. But what did you see? When you look at two different ways of doing a McDonald's here, and you're thinking about Socorro, maybe Socorro Road, maybe even your historic area, when you see these images, what's your response? Yeah? Both or? Oh yeah? That's very corporate? Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting.
It was just like a cookie cutter McDonald's, just like.
Right,
Yeah.
overdone,
Yeah.
over and over, something different would be.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's our uniqueness here in Socorro, if we would, to go that route, the
Yeah.
uniqueness of it.
That's right.
We have plenty of those buildings that can be done like the right side.
Yeah. That's right.
With minimal construction.
Yeah. You've got one of the nicest, I think it's a 7-Eleven that has the Adobe-looking structure, Pueblo-style building, right? You're starting to tell the chains, and the chains are part of life. You're starting to tell them they have to adjust in order to fit in. All right. So, actually, let's do this. What we saw was that, in general, people chose the images on the right. And the images on the right, a lot of these images are illegal under your current code. Even if a developer wanted to, they would not be able to. The setbacks, the lot coverage, the floor area ratios, your historic guidelines, which are not encouraging, or your tree ordinance actually is quite hard in a planting strip that's only 3 feet to plant anything. It's a coral. So what I'm going to say, the message I'm going to leave you with, is the images that you like the most, developers, for the most part, are not even allowed to build. Your land development regulations are out of date, and until they're up to date, you're not going to get the Socorro that you want to see. Thank you.
Mayor and Council, so we have 2 more things that we want to do with you. Hands-on exercise, which I'll walk you through in just a minute. Also for the HLC and the P&Z. I want to just frame the conversation. And then the second thing is we'll stop talking and we want to hear from you. And so we appreciate the interactiveness and your responses. This is one of the aspects of us being able to talk to you at the table. So I'm going to walk you through that exercise and then have you join one of the tables. So, essentially sometimes what happens with people like us is that we get really wonky and technical, and we talk about all these different aspects of setbacks and parking parameters and parking standards, but we don't talk about people, right? And really what this boils down to is the built environment. And so when we talk about the built environment, you may have heard that term. You may have, as we go through the months of talking to you all, we'll talk about the built environment. So the built environment is essentially what that is, right? So the Franklin Mountains, natural environment. The Rio Grande, natural environment. The beautiful Chihuahuan Desert, natural environment. Built environment, streets, lampposts, park benches, sidewalks, driveways, doorknobs. Someone put here this thing here, someone put it here, someone built this built environment, right? And we forget that these things matter and that these things affect people's quality of life. And so when we talk about the built environment, again, everything that is man or woman made, we forget that the built environment is created by us. And when I say us, I mean all of us, right? You at the HLC that dictate what can or cannot be built along the Mission Trail. P&Z that dictates what and can what not be built on certain lots of, or give recommendations to City Council. And then City Council, because you adopt your codes and your ordinances, right? And so everything that we have talked about today, that Jason talked about, that Jay talked about, that we talked about in the introduction, is not happenstance. It's not arbitrary, folks, right? I hope that that's, if you leave with anything here tonight, I hope that it's that it is very specific. Things are built very specific because of the codes and regulations that you have. And so sidewalks look the way they look because that's what the code requires. Streets look the way they look because that's what the code requires. Properties along the Mission Trail look the way they look because our zoning code allows it, and then maybe the historic district guidelines are not clear, right? So there's always this conflict. But at the end of the day, what we talk about and really what we're dealing with is the way that the built environment influences us and us being people, right? The way that we interact with our spouses, our friends, whether we take our kids to baseball or football practice, whether we go to commercial areas or shop along Socorro Road or Alameda, whether we stay home all the time because we don't want to deal with traffic. So this is important work, right? Again, we spend a lot of time being too technical, but I don't want the point to be missed that this is about people's lives, our lives, the way that we talk to each other, the way that we treat each other, the way that we interact with each other. So we're going to give you an opportunity to think about these things in a little bit more specificity in terms of the exercises on the table. So we have 3 areas, and speaking with Laureen, there, this Judge Colwell area, which is not too far from here. We didn't necessarily pick it for any particular reason, only that it's near Nuevo Waco Tanks Road, which is an important thoroughfare, and it's a blank piece of land, and chances are that you're probably going to see someone develop this in the next several years. So that's one piece of land, and then we'll walk you through what the exercise is. The second one is along the Mission, La Purísima, and so what would development look like along the Mission Trail? And then the other one is Rio Vista Farm, because we understand that in speaking to your staff and speaking to your comprehensive plan, there's a big emphasis on wanting to preserve agricultural land. There's a big emphasis on perhaps building a city hall or city complex here on this land. But what would that look like, right? And also as you start thinking through these things and you start drawing, do the codes allow it? Do the codes disallow it? Are the things that you're going to put on paper, are those things facilitated, again, by your land development codes? So what we're going to do is I'll go through those questions in just a minute. So we have, I think if you could work in pairs or individually, our staff and our group will walk around the tables, but if we could have mayor and council sit at different tables, I'll let you guys pick, but maybe one there, and 2 here, and then if I could get staff to also participate. And then what we'll do is we'll just do this for 10 minutes, come back, and then have each table present, and that should take us through another, a total of 15, 20 minutes, and then we'll wrap it up with any comments, questions that you all may have for us, for Laureen, for the staff, comments or suggestions that you feel that we should have. Comments or questions on the exercise? Everybody good? So there's what you'll see on the table, you could pick one, or work in groups, work in pairs, work individually, but essentially what we want to hear from you is how would you design these areas in your town? So we'll do about 10 minutes. Yeah.
Mayor.
So you guys can work on it individually or in groups?
One moment, please. One moment.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for a 10-minute recess.
Second.
Ruben Reyes is absent. Cesar Nevares?
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia is absent. Rudy Cruz? And Ivan Colom Villalobos?
Yes.
we're back at 7:17 into regular session.
So Mayor and Council, HLC, PNZ, that was a fun exercise. Every time we do this with the community, there's always this great excitement, enthusiasm for what things can be, right? And what things should be and the things that you want for your community. We're gonna ask for volunteers. If people want to share some of their ideas that they drew on the map. There's a lot of great conversations. I know there's people wanting to talk about this. Yes, sir. Mr. Estrada. And then if you could use the microphone, maybe also come up here, no? Yeah, why don't we ask folks to come here, because there's a, Mr. Sally, you want to stand up here and we'll hold it for
Okay, so this right here is that's Nuevo Hueco Tanks Road, and all the new warehousing that went up is right over here. And so what we were thinking, this community is already existing right down here, but that's high density. Those lots are 5,000. Those average about 6,000 square foot right here, and so it's very dense. And so this open space right here, there's already, I think, a master plan on there. But so what we're thinking, the college is right over here, right? And so we're thinking apartments right here to service the college, and then future land right here for future expansion for the school, for the college, and then more apartments up in this area. The bigger transition is that you'd be going from high density, 5,000 square foot lots. There's a major street right here, and so this right here would be like the mixed use where all the facades are right up against the street, and you have the commercial units like the coffee shops down on the bottom, and then apartments maybe up on top. And then from there you have this area right here. It's bigger lots, so those are maybe 8,000 to 10,000 square foot lots. And then up behind it, we're showing a park here. So right there'd be even bigger lots, like 10 to 15,000 square foot lots. So it's just a bigger mixed use rather than having all this acreage of nothing but high density lots. I think it should be, or we think, like I did myself, we were thinking, it should just be a transition to where it's just more, just a different reaction from everybody walking through there. And then through all the community where you have all the walking lanes and so on. So for example, there's a trail that's going up along a ditch right here. And then you have a larger park right here, maybe some baseball fields. Currently, I don't know if it went up with city council, but in this lot right here, the racket, what was it called? The pickleball that went, I don't know if it went through zoning, but that's a nice transition that we're thinking would work well.
All right, other volunteers? Yeah, we got HLC. We'll do them two, Enrique, and then we'll come back to you. Yes, okay. You guys want to sit? Yeah, right there, okay?
One of the things that we need to see in the historic district is that we need to see more venues for families. So we were thinking about having a large event center, restaurants, and also what we also desperately need is a hotel. So this is what the restaurants here at the hotel, and this is the event center. And 20% of the buildings could be 2 stories. allowing for commercial on the bottom floor and residential on the top floor. And also one of the things that we also mentioned is that the city of El Paso should do a better job of promoting her historic district because we're gonna get a lot of traffic from Loop 375 coming this way. So basically that's what we came up with. And also, in addition, to beautify the cemetery. That's something that's desperately needed. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, great. Let's do Mr. Cisneros and then we'll do Mr. Montelongo. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Mr. Cisneros, are you doing both, Mr. Cisneros? Are you doing both?
I'm just doing
Yes. If you don't mind.
Okay, so this is the Rio Vista, where the building where we're currently at. One of the things that we wanted to do was to consolidate all of the city offices right around this building. The goal is so that when any resident of the city of Socorro, when they have to get anything done, you know, it's efficient for them and for city staff. So this way, if one department has to speak to the other, it's all connected. The other thing is we were really lucky because there is such a big lot of land that we could work on, is the dream would be is maybe a sports complex that would draw tourism to the area, along with a hotel, abutting North Loop and Rio Vista. Also widening the streets. But yeah, the goal would be to make it more efficient for the use, more efficient for staff, and a regional draw for sports. The next one was on La Purísima. And with La Purísima, one of the goals would be taking into account what Las Cruces has done with their mission, where they would have light commercial businesses that would draw walkers or mission trail participants to that area. There was a big space behind or north of La Purísima. And one of the things that we were thinking is short-term rentals, kind of like Airbnbs. It would be a softer transition from the mission to the R1 residential, so I think that'd be an easier time passing. And we would want the south of Socorro also to be developed commercially, and I think this group had a very good idea of having a multi-use. So, and the dream would be to make the sidewalks, one, easier to use for the Mission Trail walkers, also adding a historical flair, I'm sure there's a better word for it, for the Mission Trail. Did I miss anything else? Lighting, shops, museums. And for the one on Rio Vista, we wanted to make the most of the Braceros Museum as well. So anything that we can definitely shine a light on La Purísima and the history of it and how long the Mission Trail has existed is something that if we could wave a wand, we would do that. Thank you.
And there's one more. There's one more. The big one. The.
So the one that.
I'm sorry. We went.
No, it's okay. So on this one. So the exciting part is the bare land, right? So close to the municipalities. The dream would be is to make the abutting properties on Nuevo Hueco Tanks to make those commercials, to make it an entertainment district, right? To capture those dollars before they leave the city. Two, to make it safer so that people that are at the entertainment district don't have to drive as far. And then transition that to make that as soft as a transition, to make it into walking trails. And the dream would be is something very similar to the Montecillo apartments, where you do have local small businesses and the apartment complexes, or the apartment complex that would feed into the community college, feed these businesses, and capture those dollars. The jogging trail is something that's going to be super important. There is already a plan where instead of having a square park or having a designated area, that we make the most of the walking trails, take advantage of the middle drain. And so the walking trails would be something, if we could add trees to it, and that way the citizens could really take advantage of it.
Let's do Mr. Rocha and then Mr. Botello and staff. I know they were on this table, so let's see if we can get some volunteers here.
All right, so I got to do it here in the Rio Vista area. Something that I was thinking about was to, of course, the protection of the Rio Vista farm, but at the same time expanding what we would call the Rio Vista Farm Historical District that would allow for multi-level, two-story small businesses to develop around the Rio Vista farm. And what that would allow us to do is to be able to have those small, light businesses with a lot of available green space. So that would allow either, as far as traffic would be concerned, like parking or anything like that, it'll be like a one-way, just kind of to reduce all that traffic in that historical area. So that would attract, businesses, small businesses, and at the same time, of course, the Rio Vista farm being the prominence that sticks out. And consider that whole area the Rio Vista Farm Historical District. In the front, you're going to have large commercial businesses that want to take it, they want to be part of this opportunity. So that way we designate that front area that runs through North Loop for those bigger commercials, say a McDonald's, a CVS, that they would allow to do that there and to kind of be seen for people going into the historical district there of Rio Vista Farm. And on the bottom and on the rear, we would, again, depending on the development, either single-family home development or multi-family. And of course, also thinking about expanding the school, again, depending on what the residential impact would be to the area, that was something that also we would have to consider the expansion of the school.
That's great. All right, folks, can we do one more? And then I'm going to ask someone from this table to volunteer. Mr. Botello.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me? Am I? Can you hear me?
No.
No? Can you hear me now? There we go. Good evening, council, commissioners. So we took a look at this area that is within vicinity to Nuevo Hueco Tanks, the El Paso Community College. And so seeing that there's a lot of density with this development, the other portion never got developed, we thought it'd be nice to have additional public spaces since there's not enough that were applied to this subdivision. And so part of the vision was to have parks, green spaces, trees, so that to enhance the walkability for people, perhaps residents in the area that commute to the El Paso Community College, also have a series of mixed-use developments that would propose commercial in the lower level, and the density would be vertical, so your apartments would be on top. So that way we condense the amount of space needed for apartments, right, and dedicate the other spaces for public use, and facilitating the transition from going from high or medium density residential to a lot more public space. And so I don't know if you guys want to add, or anybody else wants to add to that, but that was what we were thinking. Yeah. Yes.
So on this one, we're looking at the Rio Vista Farm area again. What we thought was that we would move, as said before, a condensed city hall where we'd have all staff located within this facility behind and adjacent to the actual courthouse. We'd have a road that would connect into the area, creating an open green plaza where we could still have like a small stage, still be able to hold small events, things like that for there, and then create a commercial space on the back side, which we would actually leave the farm area where the pecan trees are and create walking trails within the pecan trees, creating an outdoor park within that area, and then connecting it through with walking trails that would move and control which would move through both parks, meaning the Rio Vista Park and then this new adopted park, walking trail, bike trail that would go all the way around. Adjacent to the Rio Vista Farm, we'd use the back area, the little historical area for the sheriffs. We'd actually remove the historical area, create a monument, and then do an open arena, like an open amphitheater. The amphitheater would basically create an echoing sound towards the hills, so that way the adjacent homes were not bothered by loud music. And then you'd have an open green area for vendors, parks. So we're talking about a huge movie under the stars, a huge concert venue, and then we'd actually surround the area with trees. So that way you'd create that little light. Any kind of light show, any of that would be covered by these trees around the area. So that way it doesn't bother the residents within that area. And then we'd leave it open for the opposite sides for, as said before, maybe a multi-purpose, stadium, things like that, keeping within the facade of the historical district. So sort of like Las Cruces, those who've been down there, they have that open plaza area, taking that idea but making it Socorro. Even the area for the city hall would be a multi-structure area with a parking structure underneath, kind of like downtown, where the windows on the bottom structure are actually vents, so you can park your car. It still looks like windows, and then just upper structure, and then you'd have we keep with the Adobe bracero look throughout that area.
Add to this, and then really the last part of our conversation is just opening it up for public comment, opening it up for comments from our commissioners in terms of things that we may have missed or things that you want us to make sure that we're focusing on. So with that, we'll leave it back to Mayor and Council for any comments, questions, HLC, P&Z as well.
Ms. Villalobos?
So I'm so glad about this meeting is happening now. Not too long ago, Ms. Camilo and I ran into a developer that wants to come here and use a mixed use. Not that he had that proper word. Ms. Camilo did some research and found that through the mixed use is probably what he was going through. However, he read the whole thing and is still very leery about coming in here and purchasing land and developing because it's still outdated. The mixed use that we have is outdated to him. So I suggested to him to give us back feedback of what he would like to see. And it's really what we're here today doing. And I'm hoping to go back to him, show him the video, and hopefully he'll come back with what his ideas are and kind of maybe implement them if possible. But again, I just want to let you know that there are developers that want to come in here. They do. It's just our codes are just not what they're looking for. It would be too expensive, is what he said, to develop what we have right now. And so just wanted to share that
Great.
with everybody.
Thank you. And then let me just add, part of our scope of work is to work with developers or people that, not only developers, right, the community stakeholders, but including developers. So if at any moment, if Ms. Lorene wants to utilize our resources to meet with the developer, you guys know I'm here. So if it's helpful, because for us it's helpful to craft, I think to your point, Ms. Villalobos, to craft a code that people want to use, that people can use, and again, that it reflects many of the things that your community just told you they want to see, right? So
Right.
that's, so happy to sit down with him or her, Lorene, at any time.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Cruz?
Good evening, everybody. First and foremost, I want to express my most sincere gratitude to the commissioners of both boards. It's already past 7:30 p.m. and y'all could be at home watching TV with your families and eating dinner. Yet you're here serving the city of Socorro, giving us your time and your effort. The creativity and passion is one that I'm most fond of, and I appreciate that. You guys did an excellent job. I feel that a lot of the things that were mentioned in the plans here coincide with a lot of the things that we've been speaking about here on the table, as well as with our constituents out there. We've identified several issues and concerns that we're facing here in the city. One of them is the old parts of Socorro. They feel left out, but at the same time, there's only so many things we can do to address those issues there. I also believe that the developers that do want to come in here, they've shied away because our unified code is one that's very uninviting. Now, if we can make those changes with the help of you all, we really do appreciate that. Those changes will come, and it will draw the developers to come in here and build the Socorro that we all want. But it's taken the hard work and efforts of a small group here to make that happen, and we appreciate that. There's a book here that's several pages long that you all helped put together. So you guys should be very proud of yourselves. Go back home and let your families know this is what we did for the city of Socorro, because it's going to be here till 2040. And that's the hard work and effort of you all, so I appreciate you all, and thank you guys.
Mr. Navarez, did you have anything to say? I'm sorry.
Love the ideas. I'm all for positive growth, so thank you very much.
I just want to say thank you again for being here, and these are absolutely great ideas, like Mr. Nevares mentioned. We need to figure out a way to combine them all together and get this code done so that it's for everyone. I mean, not only for us that are here, but for everybody living out there that it's watching us on TV, and, you know, for our future, you know, some of our kids and their future kids. So, thank you.
Mayor, I think you had Mr. Padilla.
Go ahead.
Mr. Padilla, can you, yeah, you can speak.
One of the things that we have here in this community that we don't have any place else is that we have the laterals in the drainage ditches that we can use as walking paths. So we can promote those and make use of those. citywide, it'll be, I think, it'll benefit everyone as a whole. And then secondly, I wanted to mention that developers are coming to Socorro regardless of what the cost is going to be, because all that cheap state-owned land that was on the east side is almost gone. So now they're turning to the valley for development. So having the right codes will benefit the community, and also it'll help out the developers, but they would have to do what the community asked them to do.
I just wanted to make a quick comment. As we know that this is a long-term thing that's going to take. Like we say, our goal is 2040. You know, in 2040, the majority of us are not going to be here. We'll move on to other careers. You know, whatever. You know, so I think since it's starting here, and just keep everybody here in mind that, you know, that we carry this idea forward to the next, you know, commissioner that comes to the HLC, to the next one that goes into PNZ, you know, a future rep that represents one of our districts here, you know, even to the police department. He's here sitting, you know, it's like, hey, these guys are having great ideas, you know, this is something that, you know, keep the ball rolling. You know, a lot of us are not gonna be in these positions 20 years from now. You know, so I think it's something that we gotta keep in mind, that as the years go by, or we become part of these projects, these small projects, and as people come in, you know, we get them with that enthusiasm that we have here today, so they can keep going, so that we can see this through till 2040.
So one of the things that I never hear it come to light is the thriving horse community that's here in Socorro. And so I wonder, is that community, the horse community, and all those horse owners, and how many times do we drive around Socorro on Saturday or Sunday and you see people on horseback? It could be one or two people, or a group of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, or it could be as many as 20. And so I never hear that come to light. And so I wonder if it's something that should be embraced or something that should be phased out. I'm for the horse ownership. I think that's something that we should bring to the discussion as we go forward with this. There's a lot of people out there that own horses. There's charreadas, there's local rodeos. I couldn't tell you the population, but I've seen groups of several hundred people with their horses here in Socorro. It's something that we should definitely consider, keep in mind.
Mr. Estrada, maybe you could help us organize like that stakeholder meeting with them, so that we again work through your codes and regulations to allow those types of uses and those types of land uses, and again, people's quality of life through the kinds of codes that we develop. So that's something that we can coordinate with you.
Ms. Villalobos.
David, thank you for bringing that up. As a horse owner and living on a farm, that never crossed my mind, because, I mean, we still have those rights, but they're getting less and less because we don't have enough land, and that's awesome. And just so you know, the Lienzo Charro was just sold. So I believe the new owners are going to revamp it. So, and it's here in Socorro. It was just sold a few weeks ago. So anyways, thank you for bringing that up, because that is true. We still have a lot out there that still ride, still have their horses, and we should incorporate it because it is part of Socorro. It has been the history of Socorro. So thank you for bringing that up.
Well, I'm so happy to see that all of us were on the same page, and this exercise was so worthy for all of us, because we saw the future, the community. This will be very worthy for the community, for the population they deserve. This is like Mr. Rocha said, this is going to be in the future, but we have to start to do baby steps. In 2040, we are going to reach that goal, for sure.
I was really interested and I was really happy to see everybody's enthusiasm and putting into what we're going to present to our kids in the future. But one thing also, nature, I would really like to focus on the wetlands. The wetlands are a study, I don't know if many of you know, but they study the animals and that are around here. Bird watching, I really want to beautify the cemetery, and maybe that could be a sanctuary that we could have for people who want to memorize their family members. And of course, we also want to see more Antiguas. I could really see a lot of potential for you all, for your museums, your hotels. That's really interesting that we could actually get together and see where that goes. And that's it.
Yes, I would also like to thank Council and Plan and Zoning, Historical Commission and all that. It is great. I love what happened today to initiate what we were talking about. I've lived here all my life in Socorro. I love it. I see myself staying here for the rest of my life. My kids, I've got a 21-year-old and two twins that are 11 years old, and they love the city and they want to stay here. And I would really love to be part of that, pushing Socorro into that direction, to where we can have our kids also stay here. And some might not want to, but at least mine will. You know, they love Socorro. So thank you all.
Can we talk to like the Utah community too to see what their input is?
Can you speak in the mic, please?
I think it would be a great idea too if we could incorporate UTEP biologists who do studies around the area too. And that's just something we should look into, I think. That's it.
The question was including UTEP's biology department. So Ms. Dominguez, yeah, certainly we could use them as a stakeholder. So we could add it to the list of folks that we could meet with. Yes, ma'am.
I might add that at one time we did have a professor from UTEP serving on the Historical Landmark Commission, because he did a lot of work in this area as far as archaeology. His name was Dr. John Peterson. This is back in the 90s when I was an employee from 92.
Yeah, we'll see if, we'll research and see if he's still available.
Hi, you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla.
Anyone else? Back there? No? Okay. Moving on. Mr. Marwan, do we have anything for 7, 8, and 9?
We'll need to go to executive session on that.
I'm sorry? No?
Oh, there's nothing on there? Okay, yeah, no, there's nothing on that one.
Okay. Do we have a motion to delete items 7, 8, and 9?
Motion to delete 7, 8, and 9.
Do we have a second?
Ruben Reyes is absent. Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia is absent. Rudy Cruz. And Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
I make motion to adjourn.
Ruben Reyes is absent. Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Alejandro Garcia is absent. Rudy Cruz. And Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
Meeting adjourns at 7:51 p.m.
Thank you, everyone.
Mayor and council, thank you again for having us.